So, what if I told you a story could be fan fiction for two totally different authors at the exact same time? Today, we're going to dive into The Nanite Smuggler, a story that doesn't just, mash up to sci-fi legends. No, it does something way cooler. It's like a brilliant act of creative alchemy.
I mean, how is that even possible, right? It sounds like some kind of literary paradox, but that's what we're here for. We're going to unpack the super clever mechanism that makes it all work. A world where one author's fiction becomes another author's, get this, actual history. All right, here's our game plan. First, we'll introduce our two literary heavy hitters. Then we'll dig into the different worlds and ideas the story borrows from both of them. After that, we'll get to the really cool part, the brilliant trick that merges their universes, and that leads to this amazing meta twist that, trust me, you won't see coming. Okay, let's kick things off with the two pillars holding up this whole unique creation, Jack Vance and Isaac Asimov. And look, this isn't just a simple mashup. We're talking about a carefully constructed reality, one that's built on two legendary and very, very different foundations. The story is actually super open about where it gets its ideas. So on one hand, you've got the physical setting, that vibrant, adventurous world that's pulled directly from the works of Jack Vance. But the deep history, the cosmic laws, the very physics of how everything works, that is 100% pure Isaac Asimov. It's like it's Vance's stage, but the play is following all of Asimov's rules. So first up, let's talk about the where. To get that classic sci-fi adventure feel, the author just drops us right into this huge, sprawling, and pretty famous setting created by the legend himself, Jack Vance. And that stage is the Allister Cluster. Now, if you're a Vance fan, you're probably nodding along right now. This is very familiar territory. It's this massive star cluster packed with thousands of worlds, and our characters are actually vacationing on one of its planets, a place called Thray. It's basically a perfect, ready-made, super detailed sandbox for the story to play in. All right, so while our characters are walking around in this Vancian world, the universe itself is playing by a totally different set of rules laid down by the Grandmaster, Isaac Asimov. And this, my friends, is where the big, cosmic, kind of mind-bending ideas really start to kick in. Okay, so here's the absolute key concept, and it comes straight from Asimov's classic, The End of Eternity. The idea is that history isn't just one straight line. Nope. It's more like a chain of different timelines, or what the story calls realities. And a reality change, which is usually triggered by some kind of time travel event, can basically wipe the slate clean and create a whole new history for the entire universe. And it's not just about the reality changes either. The story is absolutely packed with classic Asimov stuff. We get his famous positronic robots like the super helpful guide Sistalina. And of course, there's that classic theme of a secret history. The idea that some hidden, unseen forces have been pulling the strings and guiding humanity for thousands of years. So, this brings us to the big question, doesn't it? How in the world do you fit a Jack Vance setting into an Isaac Asimov universe? How do you get these two masters to play nicely together? Well, the story has this brilliantly simple, in-universe explanation that just makes everything click. And here it is. The core mechanism is something called a reality chain. Basically, the story says that all these different historical timelines are linked together, just like a chain. So you might have the foundation reality, which then leads to the Asimov reality, which then leads to the final reality, and on, with each one being its own separate era in cosmic history. And here's the punchline, the absolute genius of it. In the story's world, the Allister Cluster isn't just some fictional place the author borrowed from a book. No. It was a real place. It actually existed, but it existed in a forgotten, previous timeline called the Asimov reality. Think about that. Vance's fiction is quite literally Asimov's history. Okay, but wait. You're probably thinking, if this place is in the distant, forgotten past, how do the characters even get there? Well, the answer is this incredible piece of technology called the Reality Simulation System, or RSS for short. Just think of it like the ultimate historical VR setup. Seriously, a character can just walk up to a console, pick a past timeline, say the Asimov reality, then choose a location, like the planet Thray in the Allister Cluster, and boom! They can step right into a perfect, immersive simulation of that past age. They can literally go on vacation in a world that we, the readers, know as the fictional universe of Jack Vance. How cool is that? And this leads us to what might be the most clever, most meta part of the entire story. It all revolves around one specific character who is the perfect embodiment of this whole blend of history and fiction. And that character is Eddie Watson. He's the main character's dad, and get this, he's a historical researcher. And what's his job? You guessed it, he uses that reality simulation system to explore past timelines, including that very same Asimov reality where the Alaster cluster used to be. But here's the brilliant twist. What does Eddie do with all this historical research he's conducting? Well, in his spare time, he writes science fiction stories. He takes the actual events and real places from past realities, and he weaves them into fictional tales for the people living in his own time. I mean, just let that sink in for a second. Inside this story, you have a character who is doing the exact same thing that the story's real-world author is doing. He's researching what, to him, is Asimovian historical fact in order to write stories that people in his time read as Vance-style fiction. The whole act of writing this kind of fan fiction is baked right into the plot itself. It all comes back to that really elegant concept of layered realities, right? It's the engine that makes the whole thing work. It lets the story be this perfect fusion of two different creative minds, and even provides a powerful, in-universe reason for why the story itself exists. And that leaves us with one last pretty provocative thought. The Nanite Smuggler isn't just fan fiction. It's a story about the act of writing fan fiction. It completely blurs that line between imagination and historical research, and it leaves us with a fascinating question. At a certain point, what really is the difference between researching the past and just writing a great story about it?